Here on ABC News Live, our show keeps a close eye on the criminal justice system and its fairness or perceived lack thereof. Last year, you may recall the story of a teenage girl. She goes by Grace, and she was sent to juvenile detention because she did not do her homework. I recently traveled to Michigan, and in an exclusive interview with us, Grace and her mother are now speaking out. They say what happened to them would not have happened if Grace was not Black.
These letters of support represent a bright spot that helped carry this mother and daughter through the darkest of times, a period that was so difficult they asked us to not reveal their faces, yet want their voices to be heard.
Well, my favorite one is the first letter that I received from her.
But one in particular stands out for Grace, the first letter she wrote to her mom, Cherise, from juvenile detention, where she was sent for failing to do her homework.
Dear Mommy, I miss you a lot and being here is hard. I haven't really wrote you because I had to ask God to give me the strength to do so. I couldn't write without crying or feeling bad for the rest of the day.
Please continue to send me pictures of me and you, or just with anyone. I love you, Mommy, and I miss you. Love, Grace.
Reading those words brings Cherise right back to this painful moment when Grace, just 15 years old at the time, was sent back to juvenile detention after her appeal, forced out of her mother's arms once again.
I was like, no, I can't go back. Like, I don't know how I'm gonna do if I go back.
To help protect her privacy, she goes by her middle name, Grace. And many say Grace is something she was not granted as she sat inside a cell for 78 days.
What was the hardest part in all of this for you?
The hardest part for me was definitely being away from my child. Another hard part was understanding how this was helping the situation.
Grace's incarceration made international headlines.
A Michigan judge who has been criticized for placing a 15-year-old Black girl in juvenile facility after she failed to do her homework.
I mean, it's crystal clear at this point that this system is set up to punish people rather than help them.
All of the attention was the result of an in-depth report by ProPublica.
This was a student with disabilities who was struggling with the remote learning situation and ended up in detention because of that.
My daughter was penalized because of having a learning disability, which is her chronic ADHD.
Her story sparked outrage from celebrities to lawmakers who called it racist, suggesting that even in the midst of a pandemic, the school-to-prison pipeline remained wide open for Black students.
In Oakland County, where Grace and her family live, there are 15% of the youth in Oakland County are Black. The youth who are referred to Oakland County Court, 42% of them are Black. The kids who are going into the court system, it's very disproportionate to the reality of who lives in that county.
Why did you decide to tell your story now?
It needs to be told because it was an injustice that should not be forgotten. It's an injustice that should never occur again.
The road that led to what she calls an injustice is long and winding. Grace's interactions with law enforcement started when she was barely a preteen.
And why did you decide that it was appropriate to get the police involved on a few occasions?
I like to say to teach her a lesson, but with the aggression, the more I exercised control with her, the more she resented it.
And in November of 2019, things escalated. Grace bit her mother's finger and pulled her hair after not being allowed to go to a friend's house. Weeks later, she stole a schoolmate's cell phone after her mother took hers away. But experts say this kind of behavior is not uncommon in teens.
The kinds of behaviors that Grace exhibited are very normal of kids. Part of adolescence is testing the limits, and part of adolescence is not having the brain functioning to understand, gee, if I do that, it's going to get me in trouble.
Grace was charged with assault and larceny for her actions.
I knew that there were going to be consequences, but I didn't think it would go to the level that it did, obviously.
Do you feel that things got to the level they did because you're Black?
Actually, I think that was a huge part of it.
Some people are going to say, but if you're charged with assault and theft, how is that a racial issue.
Yeah.
You know, you're going to be punished if you're white or if you're black.
If a white girl were to steal the phone and she has the same history as me, same like background, same everything, besides the fact that she's white, they would probably look at her and say like, hey, you know, you're not brought up like this. But for me, I feel like it was more of a, oh, okay, well, this is what we expect from black people.
Black girls are 4 times more likely than white girls to face suspension and expulsion, and are 5.3 times more likely to be transferred to an alternative school for disciplinary reasons. I don't think that Grace is very far off when she says that had she been a white girl, that the white adults in her life would have said, you know better than to do this. Don't do this.
Grace was ultimately put on intensive probation in April of last year. One of the terms of the arrangement was to complete all of her school assignments.
Your school goes online, start working virtually, and how was that transition for you?
It was just overwhelming and kind of anxious. Like, I was very anxious.
She was set up to fail in an environment where she wouldn't thrive.
Grace was set up with a caseworker who Sharice believed would help keep her on track with her requirements.
And you didn't get the help that you thought?
No, I got a violation. That's what I got.
Within days, the caseworker referred Grace to the court, recommending she be put in juvenile detention for the violation, according to ProPublica, which reviewed case documents. ABC News reached out to Oakland County Court's Family Division for comment and did not receive a response. As a result of the pandemic, Michigan's governor ordered juveniles be kept out of detention unless they posed a substantial and immediate safety risk to others. Grace was brought before Judge Mary Ellen Brennan on May 14th. Brennan called Grace a threat to the community.
Do you feel that at any point you've been a threat to the community?
No, because if we called every person who's taken something or every person who's got an argument with their mom a threat to the community, like, I'm pretty sure everybody would be a threat to the community.
Brennan ordered the 15-year-old be taken into custody and sent to a county detention center called Children's Village.
They never get any testimony from the school and or the teacher, anybody involved with her education. They get testimony from the probation officer, the prosecutor, and the judge makes her decision based on that testimony.
Grace was handcuffed and immediately taken into custody.
What was your reaction when you see your daughter, your only child, getting handcuffed to go behind bars?
I was devastated. It still haunts me, having that visual of my child being taken away from me.
Tell us about life inside the detention center.
I remember walking in the first day, and I'm like crying, like hyperventilating almost, but yeah, sleeping in a room for 12 hours a day. That was really hard. With a locked door, 7 blankets, with no pillow. That was hard.
Grace's mother, desperate to get her daughter back home, started making calls.
One day last May, I got a call just on my cell phone and from a number I didn't recognize, and I answered it, and it was Grace's mom. When Grace's mom said, my daughter is in detention because she didn't do her homework, I remember even like writing down on some scratch paper, like, detention, no homework, and I was like, it didn't sound right.
By mid-July, ProPublica published Grace's story.
It was attention that was beyond my expectations.
We immediately started to receive phone calls from all over the country. We got calls from senators, we got calls from legislators in D.C. It was amazing.
I did not know that there would be a social media movement, a hashtag Free Grace, protests.
A petition for Grace's release collected hundreds of thousands of signatures. High school students slept outside near the facility in protest. A grassroots organization led a 100-car caravan from Grace's school to the detention center. Amid mounting pressure, Judge Brennan agreed to a hearing on a motion to release Grace from detention less than 1 week after Jody's story went online.
Counsel, how many times does she get to jump her mom before you think that she's a threat of harm to her mom? How many times?
And for about 45 minutes, she went through Grace's history, going back years. The judge use that hearing to get her point of view out there on this case.
Grace pleaded with the judge.
Each day I try to be a better person than I was the last. And I've been doing that since even before I was in this situation. And I'm getting behind in my actual schooling while here. The schooling here is beneath my level of education.
But Judge Brennan concluded that Grace was exactly where she was supposed to be and denied her release.
The goal is you and Mom safe, healthy, happy in the home.
We weren't going to sleep until Grace was released. Once the judge decided that she was not going to send Grace home, we knew we had to take the next step, which was to file a petition to the Court of Appeals.
11 days after that hearing, Michigan's Court of Appeals ordered Grace's immediate release. Now an honors student, Grace says she has a whole new perspective and a new hobby, taking pictures. But her greatest passion is speaking out about what she calls an injustice in the criminal justice system.
I think it's important just overall to listen to kids and teens, and just, like I said, for the judges to allow the kid to speak and have a voice.
She's even working with one of the advocacy organizations that fought for her release.
Thank you, Governor.
Just last month, Governor Gretchen Whitmer signed an executive order to create a task force on juvenile justice reform.
We have a lot of work to do to address juvenile justice in Michigan.
Grace's situation was a complete and systemic failure of our juvenile justice system. Grace deserved better.
So it says, "Dear Grace, what else can I do to support you?"
She goes on to say,
"I'm
you have a
sorry.
superpower."
You're so brave.
Grace and Cherise say they're still overwhelmed by the support they received from around the world. And now Grace and her mother hope her story isn't just a cautionary tale, but a catalyst for change within her state's juvenile justice system.
There are thousands of other Graces out there, and we need to pay attention to those children. My child was criminalized because of her behavior and her ADHD. But Black girls are being criminalized just because of who they are.
Hi everyone, George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.